Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Thursday, 8 January. I'm your host Daniel, and today we're going to talk about Trump is seeking a record military budget of 1.5 trillion US dollars. Iranian protests continue as top judges rioters are working with the US, classic Al Jazeera. And power's been restored to Berlin after its biggest outage since World War II. So firstly, the US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that he would seek to raise the military budget to 1.5 trillion US dollars in 2027, citing the troubled and dangerous times globally. The massive surge represents an increase of more than 50% on the current year's defense budget, set at 901 billion US dollars. He wrote on social media that this will allow us to build a dream military that we have long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure, regardless of the foe. The US president said that tremendous income brought in by tariffs would allow the government to easily hit this $1 trillion number. So what? That is an absurd amount of fucking money. While I agree that we're in some pretty troubled and dangerous times, I don't really see how doubling the defense budget, 50% increase on the defense budget, is kind of the way forward. The US military has the most money by far of any economy. Even like estimates of China's actual defense budget don't even match it, which, is fucking crazy. Putting 50% more on it, I don't think is the solution. I think there's other ways of achieving this goal of like a massive modern military, and that's around like how you manage procurement and stopping the corruption and fraud within the defense industry. Just paying more money is not really going to achieve that, and this is almost certainly just going to be more debt that the US takes on. Yeah. So much for being this like fiscally responsible fucking president, right? Who's going to slash the amount of money the US owes, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, that's just fucking crazy. What he wants to do with it, I don't really know. Probably spend more on ships, planes, and people. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is the way forward, team, and I don't think this is going to be very popular within the US, who, definitely want to reduce the amount of money that the government is spending on the military. And next, protesters have taken to the streets in cities across Iran over spiraling economic crises as the country's top judges warned of action, accusing those who incite unrest of operating in line with the United States and Israel. The Iranian capital of Tehran, and protesters lit fires with thousands of marchers joining in cities that I cannot pronounce. Footage from the southern city of Shiraz showed security forces driving over a protester's barrier that read, "We revolt due to hunger." So what? Firstly, this is a good story to kind of point out, media bias. I try and get my sources from a lot of things, and I think I talked on a podcast that I was a guest on a couple of days ago that when you're reading the news, you really need to know who owns the media. So Al Jazeera is owned by Qatar, hence why they're spinning it this way. Whereas like if we looked for this story on like Reuters, we would see like the Iranian judiciary chief warns no leniency for protesters who are helping the enemy, and then talks about the amount of people that have died and the people. So you can see the difference here. So understanding who owns the media is a big part of understanding bias. But what I wanted to kind of talk about here was just the protests in general. These are very significant. I think when they first started, I assessed that this probably wouldn't be the end of the Iranian regime. But the indicators and warnings that I would put on that seem to be, ticking off one by one. And it seems possible that this is a pretty serious situation for the Iranian mullahs. Whether it's the end of the regime, it's hard to say. Uh, they still hold a lot of power. They still have a lot of military and governmental support, and they still have control of all of the systems that keep them in power. So it's not going to happen tomorrow or the next day unless there's something crazy that changes, like the IRGC flips on the regime and works against them. But that seems unlikely. It's in the name. So yeah, it's definitely something to watch and something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But I don't know. It's still probably not the end of the regime, but we are trending in a pretty interesting direction. And lastly, the electricity supply to southwest Berlin has been restored, officials said on Wednesday evening, after tens of thousands of residents were left without power for days. The outage, which the mayor described as an act of terrorism, is the longest Berlin power outage since World War II. All households in the affected areas were reconnected to the power grid by mid-afternoon on Wednesday, Berlin's Senator for Economic Affairs said. So what? I mean, this just shows you the effect of grey zone operations, right? Calling it an act of terror is, he's kind of pointing out what happened here. I spoke to some people who live in Berlin as well, and they said to me that almost everyone believes that this was some kind of attack conducted by agents sent by Russia, or at least paid for and controlled by Russia. So, yeah, pretty significant outage that caused some pretty serious issues for, people within southwest Berlin. The major risks would be around like the elderly who probably can't withstand the temperatures that are currently being seen in Berlin. So, pretty scary times for them. And it just goes to show you, like, while you may not be in a war with a country, they have a way of affecting your population. And if they want to try and influence you, they're going to have a go, especially Russia and Iran. Yeah, good to see it's fixed, though. Seems unlikely that anything will ever come of it, because that's the beauty of grey zone operations. They're almost impossible to prove unless they capture the person who conducted the attack and he somehow confesses, which is highly unlikely. And even in that case, Russia would just say it's propaganda and that he's lying. So, yeah. Anyway, that's been your Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you!